My name is Jeffrey Hulum III. I'm the state representative for House District 119, and I represent the city of Gulf in Harrison County. I'm a 22-year retired Army Sergeant Major, 6th Combat Deployment Bronze Star recipient. I'm a deacon at Morningstar Baptist Church, and I'm just a man of the people working for the people. Just a small town guy from Gulfport coming back home after the military to utilize and share my learned experiences from around the world with the people in the local district in the state of Mississippi. But one of the most important things, you said it right, is for the people of the Mississippi Gulf Coast and District 4, because we got to look at it how we got to this point. The ways of the world is not the ways of the people, because we are a people and a nation of laws and policies. Because the Constitution starts, we the people. Mm-hmm. We have to make sure as policymakers and lawmakers that we'll be responsive to the needs of the people in which who not just elected us, but the people of our areas, our districts, and that's being approachable, that's being accountable, that's being transparent with the things that's going on. It takes a collective approach. We're talking about leadership and running for a state office, running for a federal office. It all starts with leadership. You have to be a servant at heart, because you have to put service over self. And we put service over self. Every situation calls for a different leadership style. Some people may have a direct leadership style. Some people may have an indirect. Some people have a combined. But when you are in the legislative process, going through this process of winning a seat, it always comes from the combined approach, where you and the constituents get together to share ideas. You got to listen to their ideas. Right. You take their ideas and you move them forward. But when you get up there to those seats, you take the direct approach, meaning you take exactly what you and those citizens came up with, say what's the needs of you all's area collectively, not just the ones who are going to vote for you, but the ones who are not going to vote for you, because you still elected to serve at the will and the well-being of them and their families. And that's what you move forward with. And any time the policy or the laws go against the will of the people, not the majority, but the will of the people, you must stand up. You must stand up, not just object, but also stand up and say, how do we work our way around this? And that's where the collective effort and the combined approach comes to, because you got to work across the aisle, work with people. That's one of the most important things that when it comes to what and why should we be running for these seats? Yeah. It's to give the seat back to the people and the working people. Yeah, one thing we'll start off with food insecurity, because food insecurity ties to lack of poor health care. Also, it ties to low and poor performance inside of a school system. And the way you do it, and the way it got to be done, because we don't have grocery stores, fresh fruits and vegetables, in the majority of our minority communities in the 4th Congressional District. And a large portion of our district are rural areas. Right. And you start thinking about the nutrition values or the neglect of the nutritional values that we have. And you start talking about the medical illnesses that plagues our communities, especially low to moderate to income communities. We don't call them poor communities. We got to treat everybody with dignity and respect. Absolutely. And you start thinking about the illness that we have, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, heart failure, the lack of walkable spaces in our communities. And when you start thinking about things like that, and you also got to understand, how do they get to this place? They got there because they had lack of poor health care. They did not have acute care, preventive care. All thing they have is when a person gets sick, they have to go to the emergency room. By the time they go to the emergency room, it may be too late. Yeah. Because according to the American Heart Association, Mississippi has one of the highest amputee rates in the nation. And a person with an amputee, their life expectancy is 5 years after they receive that amputation. Then you start talking about food insecurity. Food insecurity is near and dear to my heart, because we're in the greatest nation on earth. We're in the state that produces some of the most foods that's shipped overseas. And why are we starving? We have 1 in 4 kids that go hungry every day in the state of Mississippi. And that number climbs when those kids are out of school or during the summer breaks. And then we also have a federal government that's filled with rhetoric and chaos, which stopped the summer feeding programs last summer, right, which exacerbated a lot of the neglect policies that was given to our communities. Then we walk it back. We go back to what else missing in food insecurities. Our senior citizens, 1 in 8 senior citizens inside the state of Mississippi go hungry every day. And that number really is higher than that if you dig down into it, because a lot of our seniors are taking care of their grandkids because systems is approached because lack of employment, lack of underemployment.
Right.
The average person, especially even with the school teachers, are working 2 and 3 jobs after school. So how can they really focus on the kids? But we also got to understand, well, we had the federal government back and taking back the Department of Education, which they said it was going to do. And when you start walking back the Department of Education, you start talking about federal laws that's sworn to protect disabled kids, different kids. And then you also got to think when they shifting student loan funds over to a different agency to go after the people who trying to make ends meet to pay these loans back, what do we have? Public schools. All schools are important because everything we do deal with some form of education. You cannot have a productive workforce if they're not healthy and they're not educated.
Correct.
But that's why you got to make sure that we have strong public schools, because the bulk of this nation and the bulk of the state going to public schools.
Yeah.
And it also gives people not just a way ahead, but it gives them a way of life through life learned and life challenges.
Yeah.
Back and taking back the Department of Education, which they said it was going to do. And when you start walking back the Department of Education, you start talking about federal laws that's sworn to protect disabled kids, different kids. And then you also got to think when they shifting student loan funds over to a different agency to go after the people who trying to make ends meet to pay these loans back, what do we have? Public schools. All schools are important because everything we do deal with some form of education. You cannot have a productive workforce if they're not healthy and they're not educated.
Correct.
But that's why you got to make sure that we have strong public schools, because the bulk of this nation and the bulk of the state going to public schools.
Yeah.
And it also gives people not just a way ahead, but it gives them a way of life through life learned and life challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on everything. For your district, the district you're running for U.S. House of Representative District 4, the coastal Mississippi faces real climate vulnerability, flooding, hurricanes, as well as rising seas, rising waters. What's your position on environmental and infrastructure policy for your region, or for this region rather, of the Gulf Coast?
Well, one of the most important things I look at when it comes to environmental conditions, the things that happen when we do have our natural disasters. Also, we got to think about in our underserved communities, our neglect communities. We have to think about throughout the district where some of them have no ravine, ditches, or things that overflowing on a daily basis, waterborne illnesses such as mosquitoes and different things like that. We have a rodent problem, some of that, and that affects not just the quality of life, but the vegetation of that area. We need to make sure we have policies that's set in place for infrastructure improvement, for our drainage, sewer, and different apparatuses that uplift that municipality, uplift that county, uplift this district, because we all know the storm is going to come.
Yeah.
We all know that people only have a certain amount of money. The average person in America don't have $500 for emergency time. And then when you put that on the Mississippi Gulf Coast with low wages, because our minimum wage is still at $7.25, it's not a livable wage, not even a workable wage. And then a hurricane or natural disaster come through and people got an emergency, they're already behind on their utilities. They're already behind on not just the commodities, but you also have to look at emergency standpoints for us, medical, school, and different things they want to do with their kids. They're already behind the power curve when it comes to having the money to sustain if something happens. The affordability is no longer there.
Right.
Because any environmental, any natural disaster, it puts them in harm's way because they do not have the money to evacuate. And that's why you see our homeless population is through the roof.
Yeah.
On the Gulf Coast. We do not have homeless shelters on the Gulf Coast. And when it comes to environmental conditions and the change in weather and climate, you got to think about this. The only time that they open the warming shelters is when they get below 30 degrees. People can die from hypothermia, freezing in 38 degrees, 42 degrees, depending on what's the wind chill.
Right.
So we have to make sure that we understand what effects that we'll have when we're making laws and we enforcing certain policies, but also got to see what type of funding that's out there to improve the conditions of environmental global warming. Because global warming is real.
Yeah.
We got to understand the survivability when it comes to poor quality air, water pollution. We got to understand those type of things because they can lead to an already overexerted health system when people get sick from waterborne illnesses. People get sick from bacteria coming out of the waterway, whether it be the Gulf or whether it be one of the canals or ravines where people go find their way of feeding themselves through some type of seafood. That's what it is because people is not going to starve if they got a way to go find them a source of food. And that source of food may not be the best thing for them, but they're going to do it. But inside that, they think they're helping themselves. They're actually killing themselves softly by eating something that's not right for the body, that's poisonous, or that's polluted.
Yeah, you've touched on everything. I think one thing that I would like to ask you before we wrap up, and I ask you if you have anything, specifically dealing with, you just came out of primaries.
Yes.
And I'm more than certain you've heard or have had some people to contact and say, hey, I was purged off the rolls. Like, what is your call to action to the people within your district when it comes to making sure that they're registered to vote, but not only that, making sure that their polling precinct is, accurate?
What I would share with the people, and I'll tell you, you can start in your home first. Self-care is better than any care. Make sure you are registered to vote. Go check your voter registration, either online at your circuit clerk's office. Then start with your family. Then go to your friends. Then branch out to your work. Then branch out to your church. Then overall throughout the community. This is a hands-on approach. It's going to take everybody to make sure that the democracy is saved because our democracy is under attack.
Yeah.
We have to look at it from the standpoint, 27 years after slavery, we was given the right to vote through the 15th Amendment. Shortly after that, the 1890 Constitution walked those rights back in the state of Mississippi, and then we came out with poll tax, literacy tax. It took us almost 100 years to 1965 to get those rights back. Now we're here in 2026, and every year since then, they've been walking our voting rights back. Because you can look at it, no matter how you want to justify it, if you got to show a birth certificate, if you got to get a passport, that's some form of tax. A lot of people barely have enough to pay a utility bill, pay prescription medication, put gas in their vehicles. And you want them to go buy $100+ passport? Think about that. We will talk about strong borders. We could talk about immigration. We could talk about all day long. But what about us working class individuals who are American citizens who've been treated like third world citizens through these draconian approach and third world tactics?
Yeah.
So when you walk away voting rights, all this under attack. And we want people to understand that you're not immune from this. No matter if you just voted last week or you just voted yesterday. When they go in and go through the system and start purging, they go through it not with a fine-tooth comb. They go through with an axe and start chopping things up.
Yeah.
They go through it with, hey, I'm trying to get a number for a certain individual. Let me see how I make it. So they try to find any way, not just to discredit you, disqualify you. They go through a way to try to remove you.
Yeah.
Because when they remove you, that's what they want, to take your voting rights away. But they still want you to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And you start thinking about some of the bills they coming out with. Mississippi has some of the worst draconian voting laws already on record, and we still able to survive and overcome that through voter ID.
Yeah.
But we need all people to understand, if you do not have a driver's license or state issued ID, you can go to the circuit clerk's office. The circuit clerk will fill out a form, print you out a form, and send you an official ID to vote with. Not only that, the greatest part is they will pay for your ride to get to the circuit clerk's office. So we need to utilize the system and the resource that's in place to make sure we're speaking up, not just for ourselves, but our kids and our unborn kids.
Yeah.
We need to make sure our parents and grandparents had a quality of health care through the power of voting. We need to make sure that voting is not a second or third order effect, but voting is the only thing that's gonna give you that quality of life you seek, only gonna protect the quality of life you have, and only thing is gonna keep you safe from rogue organization, rogue immigration, or rogue policies and laws that's gonna continue to make you be a third-class citizen, a third world person, and make you feel less than a human being you are.
You touched on everything. I appreciate you for answering that. If you could leave anything for the people in the needs of your campaign as of right now for your district, what could they do to assist and help you at this time?
But one of the most important things, when I going around talking to people, I have talked to thousands and thousands of people. And the consistent thing I tell everybody is pray. Pray, because faith without works is dead.
Very true.
I want you to pray. I want you to research who Jeffrey Hulum III is. Look at my body of work. Look at and see if I'm the candidate that you would like. See if I'm the candidate that you feel as though that has the skill set, the ability, and the responsiveness to fight for you and your family and your well-being of life. I want you to make sure you go out there and you check your voting rolls. You check the people in your community. And also, if you have any loved one that's incarcerated and they have not committed one of the 23 disfranchising crimes, and it may have a felony, but they still have the right to vote, make sure they're registered to vote and get them out to the polls and vote.
Yeah.
And if you are disfranchised, use your resources to help other people get to the polls and vote. Stand in the gap for someone else. That's the most thing we tell everybody. Be self-service. Take care of self when it comes to making sure you're able to vote. Take care of your immediate community, and then branch yourself out. You have to show your operational reach by reaching out to not just the people in your town, but people outside your town, because people outside your town has a lot of influence what goes on in your town.
Very true. Well, I appreciate you for taking the time to speak with us today. We are very happy to have you as our U.S. House of Representatives District 4 nominee, and we look forward to the fight up until November 3rd.
Yes, I thank you for having me, but I just want the people to understand, we're going to win this fight. This may be a tall order, but it's not an order too tall. Because last time I checked, we only had to have the faith of a mustard seed.
Very true.
And all we need to do is understand this. On November the 3rd, vote Jeffrey Hulum III, and change has already come because we're walking in our promise right now.
Sounds good.